am so happy to be back here with you today. My beautiful and wonderful co-host Bree was not able to join us today because she is coordinating that amazing move that she's doing out there in Idaho. She will be back for our next show. She will be missed today, but I am very happy to be joined today by Tony DeLelio, one of the amazing Broadway dancers of our time today, and a great friend and a wonderful colleague on the judging circuit with me. When I met him, I knew that he had to be on this show. We coordinated this deal in the back room on a break judging, and this is his second time on the show. And I'm extremely happy to talk to him about how we can create gender neutral performing and learning spaces for young dancers, something he is very passionate about. He's been featured in HuffPost talking about this. So we are very happy that he has found the time today to meet with us and talk on Beyond the Steps. If you are a first-time viewer to the show, we are a weekly video podcast that talks about all things racism and equity, sex abuse and prevention, dance, medicine and science, nutrition, psychology, mindset, and wellness, all things so that we can come together and make the dance industry and performance athletics in general healthier, happier, and safer for everyone. Today, we're going to talk about gender neutral performing and learning spaces for our youth, specifically our youth dancers. This is a topic that I think is long overdue. It's one that we are way behind on as an industry when it comes to the way that we teach, the way we choreograph, the way we adjudicate, and the way that we costume. So we'll probably touch on all of those today. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this episode will be available to you in its entirety on YouTube at TP Dance Creations and at Apollo Performance at any time. You can tag, share, comment, like, let everybody know that this is happening. And you can still do it now because we're just getting started. So please let your friends know to jump on and listen to this important conversation. I'm going to read a little bit about Tony. I can't possibly read this whole bio, but Tony is a queer performance and visual artist, choreographer, and member of the Verdon Fosse Legacy, Broadway This Ain't No Disco Atlantic, U.S. tours of Cats Revival, Matilda, Kinky Boots, Beauty and the Beast, you name it, and was recently burning up the stage in Broadway's Fosse Dancing. Tony, I am so happy to have you here. It's been a year since we've seen each other and been together, and thank you so much for making time for us today.
Of course, thank you for bringing me in to your platform. You have such great conversations, and I loved our last one. Last time we talked, I was doing the first iteration of Dancin', the Fosse show out in California. So it's cool. So much has happened since then. So it's really cool to, revisit
this.
Yes,
absolutely. So you were recently, like I mentioned before, featured in the HuffPost article where you talked about the freedom of Fosse's gender neutral choreography, the way it's not necessarily assigned. It's assigned to a body, not necessarily a gender. So can you talk a little bit about what that means and what that freedom has afforded you as a member of the cast?
That freedom has afforded me such a deeper exploration of as an actor. I think when the assignment was growing up, the seed of all of this and what got this going for me was just that direction of dance like a boy. Full stop. And it ended there. And so I think in my adult life, I've been on this journey of finding out more like, okay, how do I want to inhabit space? How do I want to use my body? What are creative teams wanting to see, for their vision? And so as someone who is queer and lives on a lot of different spectrums in the Fosse world, it was one of the few times in my professional career where I was, asked to explore. All the labels are off. It's like, okay, you as a human being, what are you experiencing right now? And that conversation was for everyone in the room. It wasn't geared towards one group of people. It was, all 22 of us in the space were being given the same information.
Did you feel like I mean, I don't want to say spiritual experience, but because some people relate that to religion, but do you think it made the performing space feel more like a spiritual experience or experience where you were showing up authentically as whoever the creator is?
Yes.
Put you.
Yeah, I definitely see dance as a spiritual act.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a member of any organized religion. However, I do have my own spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And with dancing, it's the mind and body working together, and inevitably the soul, because your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are channeled into it. So whether you're aware of it or not, this like transcendent thing happens with a group of people
Mm-hmm.
to what you're speaking on. And it felt like an express ticket to get there,
Mm-hmm.
because we all were being asked to show up so authentically,
Mm-hmm.
and also just how we were being seen and respected and spoken to, and what was required of us. It was full body, full heart, full mind. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was spiritual. It's something that you can't put words to or pin down.
Right. Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
just energy that existed in the room.
That's
That
powerful.
happens whenever you're dancing, but because it was so open,
Uh-huh.
and so like what's gonna make this work is like, who is Melissa? That's what's gonna
Uh-huh.
make this work,
Mm-hmm. And it makes every show different because your day
Yeah,
determines how you show up.
it is different every day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, is that's amazing. I want to start with the basics because we like to do that here because we never know where
Let's
people
break
are
it
entering into
down.
the space. Um,
Absolutely.
Gender neutral. What does gender neutral actually mean, especially in the dance and teaching space?
Yes. I believe gender neutral means speaking to um the human experience, like with the soul, the mind, the heart,
Mm-hmm.
and not what you look like, and not even it's not assuming how someone is approaching a space based on their
Your
gender.
gender, right? Okay.
And I think when you're working on a specific role that's written in the text, even now, like a lot of that's being interpreted, that's really specific, like a specific character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm thinking really basic here.
Mm-hmm.
Elle Woods in Legally Blonde.
Mm-hmm.
Elle is on paper in the material a woman who lives in Southern California, who graduated Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
When we're teaching dance, we're not, and in the classroom, and even learning choreography set on a certain dancer, we don't, we have freedom to, the dancer is bringing this to life. We're not
Mm-hmm.
dressed
Right.
because Elle Woods. So I, it's interesting that when we're learning port de bras,
Mm-hmm.
or we're learning technique, it's, oh, because of your gender, you're going to do it this way. And I understand in older European techniques,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the tradition of like,
Mm-hmm.
men traditionally do this and women traditionally do that.
Right.
And there is value in learning that this is a traditional technique and a traditional
Mm-hmm.
styling, but I think we need to call it out as that, so people understand,
Right.
especially younger dancers understand.
Right. Yeah, I totally, and I think that we can make some strides in that way in realizing that that is a traditional technique, and a lot of those traditional techniques and those norms were established based on a misogynistic, paternalistic society that women shouldn't do it this way because fill in blank.
Yes,
To why
exactly.
women should not, or why men should. And that's not necessarily where we want to continue to move.
Exactly. You know what? I just had a new thought generating hearing you say it and word it that way. As society has progressed, like these techniques have existed for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
As society has progressed, and let's look at women as a group of people have gained more autonomy and equality in our society, inside of the dance studio, we like almost, it's almost looking at in like traditional European ballet techniques, it's almost upheld as like, oh, well, this is integral to the work. The women do this and the men do that because we are honoring this technique as if it is a Bible, you know, and we're doing these things, but we're just dancing in here. However, with these younger minds, if they're in a space and it's, well, the girls do this, end of story, and then we're expecting them to then go out into the real world, and it's like, oh, but still, now you can advocate for what you need and want. Now you can say, I want to try that jump. It's, I think in teaching those traditional roles, I do think there's a responsibility of like, this is a traditional dance, the way you would learn something like from a really specific culture and want to honor where that came from.
Right. Yes, exactly. Like, we can still honor that. We don't have to discard it. We can honor, but also it has a place for realizing what it actually is. That is not a rule. That is a style, or that's a
yes.
So what are some of the ways that you think, you know, and you've been teaching a lot back in the classroom, a lot more now, what are some of the ways that you think that we are perpetuating these gender norms unnecessarily without even realizing it, just because of tradition? Like, one thing that comes to mind immediately for me is dress code. Like, okay, you as a girl must wear your pink leotard, your black leotard, and your pink tights. You as a male must wear your white t-shirt and your black, you know, your black legging or your black tights.
Yes.
That's the first thing that comes to mind. But what about even choreography wise? Like, how do we perpetuate that? You don't even realize.
Yeah. In regards to how people dress their bodies, I love fashion. It's never something for me. If I'm making a comment on it, it's a compliment, because it's like, yes, I love that skirt. I love that top. It's just, it's the uplifting, you know. I've experienced it growing up, and different, like a guest teacher would come in, you know, and just like the comments on, and like kind of like the digs at like what you're wearing and how you present yourself kind of stays with you, especially if it's someone in a position of power. You're like already taking what they say really seriously. So I think now, being in this position, I love complimenting people's outfits, even on the street. I think it goes a long way, to say I see you. But I think in the classroom, when it comes to wordage and verbology, to like describe things in the same way you would compliment an outfit, in like strength, power, instead of leaning towards the like sexualization of movement.
Right.
You know, or even telling like a kid, like, have a sassy attitude. What I know from acting is there is a way to get that kind of a performance, what we would call like sassy or whatever. There's more, and we can dive into it, but I want us to like think more creatively as teachers, and how can we inspire them to perform that, not from a place of like, can you just do this stereotypical thing?
Right.
You know?
Right. I know in our last conversation, you really inspired me and really gave me a different perspective when you talked about using things from nature to make descriptions around things, like move like a certain animal, a cat, a bear, a tiger, versus move like a girl or a boy or a woman, or, you know, those types of things, making those types of correlations. Versus, you know, being soft and delicate, you know, maybe willowy, or, you know, like a tree, like a leaf, like those types of things. Do you find that those things tend to work for you, and do the students make the connection? It's the question.
They do, because you're letting them build something within themselves, and they're not comparing themselves to an idea of a man, a woman, even, you know, referencing a performer like Beyonce, these kids kind of like they disengage and they had this sour look on their face. Maybe it's because their parents like her and they don't. But I think on the deeper level, what that is like, I'm my own person. And what used to inspire me and my friends, we would love to emulate people, but that worked for us 10 years ago. And if it's not going to get my students engaging, then I won't use it. And so what I find is using things like elements from nature or doing viewpoint work, like add tension or like you're wringing a towel. They're able to use their own imagination and build something new in their minds. Therefore, it's just so much more real that they can grab onto instead of placing this like comparative, like be like this.
This thing, this person, this gender.
Yeah, which
framework.
Okay. Yeah, which it ends up in, and you can get a really talented kid who knows how to do that, but then they're just replicating something and it gets really performative and it's not out of their own imagination. And I've learned that even just within myself as a performer. I'm like, oh, that didn't feel good. I was trying to be something I'm not, and yeah.
It just didn't come off well. Now, I mean, I think that also lends itself to a wider variety of choreography too. Like if you are constantly telling somebody to be like Beyonce, then you're gonna apply Beyonce to everything that you do. That can't possibly be. I love Beyonce. Don't get me wrong. If I could be Beyonce, I totally would. But I'm sure sitting in my kitchen cooking dinner is probably not where Beyonce should show up. Same thing with choreography. Like you want to be more versatile. And if you assign it to a person or thing, then you constantly get that lens versus being able to have a different lens every time.
Yeah. And anytime I show my students, because this piece of choreography I'm working on in Virginia, I have a lot of specific references and I want to share that with the kids. But when I'm showing them these videos, I'm really clear on why are we watching this? Like what we're looking at, the dynamic and what they're doing. We're not copying them, but I want us to get inspired by, what are we picking up on here? What's the difference between this performer and that performer? And how can we excavate it in like a research way? Again, just anything to plant seeds in their minds as an individual.
Absolutely. If you are just now joining us, we are talking about how we can, or why it is actually important to establish gender neutral learning and performing spaces in our classrooms, on our stages, as we adjudicate, as we critique students. And if you are coming to this episode now, you want to watch it from the beginning, please catch us on YouTube at Apollo Performance or at TP Dance Creations. Like, share, comment, call people over. We still have a lot of show left, so please join us for that. I want to talk about benefits and benefits, and also kind of get into a deeper conversation about the threats that come with not taking the steps to establishing this type of space for your students. Because I know that growing up, particularly in the southern region of the United States, and being in what we would consider the Bible Belt, I guess, even there were probably some times that you were in many spaces that did not honor who you were as a person. So what are some of the negative impacts that you felt and that you have seen or that you know of not establishing these type of gender neutral spaces for young dancers?
I was really blessed with my home studio was such Divine Dance Center, shout out, Roanoke, was a really like safe bubble for me to like when I got into that studio, like what I was experiencing at public school, what I experienced even at like my performing arts high school program I did, that was like really safe. And so it would be when we would bring in a guest teacher or at convention, these things would be said and we would all just kind of like look at each other. And and to answer your question, in those experiences, it was this like practice of public shaming where these things are said because you're in a group of people, but it was comments based on anything related to assuming something about the kid based on how they look. Yeah, and not wanting to lead with curiosity for the students in front of a group of people that is really lasting. So I think what I experienced it because I am very aware that I am a loud and crazy dancer, especially in high school. Oh my God. And so attracting attention and putting yourself out there like that warrants yourself to have these things said to you that isn't actually there to help you. And when the public shaming happens, I think the real hurt is that it could really shut someone down who does put themselves out there. I am resilient as hell, and like none of it would knock me. But I would see like my friends who had like who would love to perform, who would make really bold choices over time, get watered down to this like just neutral place of just doing what they're told. Just as a way to preserve yourself.
Yeah. And that, I would have to imagine that spills over into other parts of life. Like as you make yourself smaller and you learn that that's what you do, you probably do it in school, and you probably do it in relationships, and you probably do it in employment situations where you've learned this strategy of don't be yourself so that you don't get publicly shamed.
Yes. Yes.
That has to be hard, especially in formative years, to be able to do that, to be able to undo it when you learn that that's not how you should be. Like think about when you get older and you're like, wait, that was public shaming. That shouldn't have happened to me, and having to undo it. Imagine having a kid that didn't have to undo it. What if you lived life like that? Whole life.
I know. I mean, the power that dance, like growing up in theater and dance, the power it has to make you confident in public speaking, working as a team player, understanding leadership, collaboration, that can also work in the other direction. So like as educators, there's a responsibility there to like really keep cultivating this, like all the good things that dance can give you, because it's a vulnerable environment for a young kid, especially kids today getting off of, they're not on the internet. It's a real life thing. So that time matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much outside of like learning steps and training and technique.
So I know that you practice this in your teaching practice. You go to different studios. You've been to many studios before. Do you ever get pushback? Is it ever, or do you know of any colleagues who have ever talked about, having a studio owner or a parent that these are boys, you teach them like boys. These are girls, you teach them like girls, and getting pushback with that?
No. Because it's foolproof. It's like pushback for what? Like I'm not even walking in and naming it and being like, and I'm going to make this a gender neutral space. It's like the girls I was surrounded by, and even in the professional world, women are given, and this is branched off the dance like a boy thing. Women are given, and push down this muscle, engage this thing, this is how you bevel. Like it's given this whole anatomy breakdown. Well, and then with guys, it's like just dance like a guy. It's like, okay, well, I will break down every muscle that is engaging themselves right now, and the byproduct is this traditional masculine strong that anyone can do. But there's no pushback, because I'm just making all of my students are seen. Everyone, we're gonna have a good time, and I will make sure that you have put something in your pocket as an artist, a performer, and a technician. Learn one of those things, I've done my job. The
Mm-hmm.
only pushback I've ever gotten was I was just telling them they were like, don't say when you're in the professional world or when you're a professional dancer, because that is like putting pressure on them. Like some of them want to be nurses and doctors and stuff, and don't relate it to like, well, in the professional world. And it, out of context, it sounds like I was like with the cane, like when you're a pro kid, it's going to be like this. But I was just sincerely, from my perspective, just trying to encourage them, like planting seeds now will benefit you later.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't, it's not a shock.
Mm-hmm.
So what I got from that was I was making assumptions that everyone wanted to pursue this professionally and that some kids could, disengage where they're like, but I want to learn right now. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not dancing after high school. So I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. So now anytime I am trying to get my students to understand something about planting seeds for the future, I always bring it back that the skills you learn in the dance studio, you can take with you everywhere.
Yep, they are totally, totally, totally transferable. And I think that that's a really good point that you just made about you don't necessarily make a declaration. It's not, and I think that when we talk about specifically gender equity and inclusion and gender neutrality, a lot of people feel like in order, and I mean, even in the racism space and that type of sexism, people think I have to wear a shirt that says I am an ally and I am in this space gender neutral, and that's not what you it's the behavior, not the declaration, because oftentimes the declaration precedes the behavior and the behavior never actually happens. I would much rather you have the behavior and make the declaration and do absolutely nothing.
Yes.
I mean, if you lead with the behavior, when there's positive change that you see in your students, then parents have no, I'm going to say no, that's a generalization. They have no choice but to say, this has been a better experience for my child, versus leading with the declaration and getting pushback about it first. Like, show them. Put the proof is in the pudding. So I love that idea of not necessarily making a declaration, but making the change in behavior and letting it be proof for itself.
Yes. Actions speak so loudly.
Louder than words all the time. If you are just now joining us, this is Beyond the Steps. I am Melissa McDaniel Grisham, missing my co-host Bree Zabrowski today, but she will be back soon. But I'm very happy to be here with my friend Tony DeLelio, talking about how we can better have gender neutral performance and learning spaces and how to make them better for our students. If you would like to watch this episode from the beginning, please go to YouTube at Apollo Performance or at TP Dance Creations and catch it from the beginning. Let your friends know, comment, let us know what you think, and we'll love to hear your opinion. I want to get to homework, Tony, because we give homework every single week to everybody, because like you said, actions speak louder than words. We want to make sure that we give every viewer one action that they can take between now and our next show, which is 7 days from now, to make progress in this area. So what would be your homework for us today?
I would say, inspired by that story we were talking about, like getting publicly shamed, the homework is like publicly compliment someone, publicly uplift somebody. Because I think, and let it come from a real place, and uplift someone that really communicates, I see you. I see you beyond what your hair looks like, what your outfit is, how you're presenting. Like, I see you. And right now we're talking about the educational dance space. Whether that's like a classmate of yours, a student of yours, a colleague, even if you're working professionally, uplift somebody. And I add the publicly thing because the power that being shamed publicly can have, uplifting someone and telling your student, like, everybody, like, Melissa just did this in a way I have never seen before. Like, please, can you share this? Like, do this for the class. I think then it just gets everyone else on board with wanting to do well and seeing other people get called out for doing well. you know, because I think it's understood we're in the classroom and rehearsal. How are we going to be better? Growth mindset. What's the note? What's the critique? And to stop and have that moment of like celebrating someone who is doing something really well, I find goes a really long way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It works in the reverse, just like it works the negative, it can work for the positive. So I absolutely love that. Go ahead, make it an intentional practice in your classes moving forward over the next week, to really make that positive uplift with your students in there. We also have homework like we do every single week is to take the steps initiative. It is a course that is available for free, 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 at Apollo Performance. The link is there on the screen for you. It's modules that give you helpful information on racism and equity, sex abuse prevention, psychology, mindset, gender equity, dance, medicine, and science, and all of those things in between. It is free. It's not everything you need, but it's definitely a great start. Tony, how can our guests get in touch with you and follow you and see what you're doing?
Yeah. So my Instagram, I share so much there, like whether it's projects or upcoming performances and classes. It's just my name, Tony DeLelio at Instagram. And then my link tree has the links to all the fun stuff. I got a lot of different media streaming platforms. It's just Linktree/Tony DeLelio. And it's all there. There's even an email button.
There is even an email button, so you can email, and you do classes, master classes, choreography, and everything, right?
I do. Right now, all my choreographic efforts are at my home studio at Divine Dance. For this piece that I'm really passionate about, I'm trying to keep things a secret, and just let the work get shared. But it's a dream. It's a dream, and I'm grateful to the studio owner Riley Fitzgerald for letting me come in and make this piece. I've never worked with 27 dancers before. Because normally the projects you fund, it's like, all right, the budget allows for a duo or trio or a little group.
Solo, right? Exactly.
Yeah, but this is it's a dream, and those kids perform. Wow. I'm like getting emotional just thinking about it, but they work hard, and they show up. And in that room, we practice everything we've been talking about, you know, and we'll have a thing where it's like, all right, who inspired you, you know? Or even like doing it in classes, you know, just asking that question. Yeah. Wow. Well, sorry, that was a tangent.
I'm trying to get you to North Carolina. So if there's other people out there in North Carolina who want Tony, then email me and we'll get together. We will come together and we will set up something. So thank you so much. It has been a pleasure and an honor to have you. I can't wait to see you again. Hopefully I see you again on the judging circuit. If not, I'll see you again in my studio. And we can work together there. Thank you to everyone out there who is watching. Next week is a flashback with Ashley Mowry, where we're going to talk about how does mentally abusive behavior by dance educators impact our students. It's a flashback to season 1 when Ashley was with us, and we talked about that. So make sure you don't miss out on that, and make sure you do your homework. And until we see you next time, we hope that you continue your journey beyond the steps. See you next week. Bye, everyone.